Today, I want us to talk about how to be daring. And whenever I start thinking about this topic of being daring, my first thought always goes back to the 1983 movie, A Christmas Story. I don't know if you guys remember that, where those kids were double dog daring each other and triple dog daring. You can't refuse a triple dog dare because that's almost like you have to do what the person's asking you to do. And that scene ended up with someone's tongue stuck on a frozen pole. That's not what I'm actually talking about when we talk about daring. To go into something childish and to do something stupid just because somebody's, manipulated you into doing something foolish. That's not what we're talking about. When I'm talking about daring, I'm talking about, seizing the opportunities that God has given us. I've had the opportunity for the last 7 years to work with the military, and I've had a chance to work with the Marines, the submarines, and and now I'm working with the surface fleet. And each one of these organizations know how to be daring. That's what they're there for. They're there to go into harm's way. The Marines, I was especially impressed with them, how that they would do the most ridiculous things, such as charge a hill, fight in the middle of the trenches, and I was with them with the ground pounding units and whatnot. But as I started to observe how they do this, they don't just go into these really high charging, death-defying moments of their lives without planning, without strategy, without a lot of thought set before us. So today what we're going to do is we're going to look at a verse or a chapter in Nehemiah, and we're going to use that as kind of an example for us on how to seize moments in our lives when we're stepping out of our comfort zone and whatnot. So there's a couple different ways that we can come up in our lives that when we start thinking about doing daring things, there's a couple of thoughts. And in my life, there's a time whenever I kind of seized something, or I grabbed a hold of something that was totally over my head. If you knew me back in grade school, I was just this dyslexic kid that could barely read, and then I go to school, and then I get out of school. Great, I'm done with high school. Yes, I never have to open a book again. No, now you go to Bible school, and then I go to Bible school, and I study, and I make it out of there. 4 years. Oh, that's awesome. Great, I'm done with that. I never have to do this again. Never have to open up those books and never have to read. Nope, that's not what happened. Next thing I know, I was sitting in seminary, and you've been. I don't know if you guys have ever been into your lives whenever you've reached something that's, it's totally over your head. I remember sitting the first week in seminary. I go to the first class, right, and I sit down, and I'm ready to tackle this thing. I'm totally out of my comfort zone. I could do this. So the professor gets up, and he has like 10 books in his hand. He sets them on there. He says, I'm going to have you for the next 3 months. You see these books? It's about 2,000 pages of reading. And what I want you to do is you read them, and I want you to give a book report on each one of those. But that's not the major thing. I also want you to think of a project where you're going to end up writing 25 pages on this thing. This needs to be academically done, and you need to do a good job with this. I'm like, okay, I could do this. So the next day I go to the next class. And lo and behold, it's like he had the same mantra that the other guy had. He grabbed his 10 books, he grabbed it, because boom, these are 2,000 pages you're supposed to be reading in this class. I want a book report on each one of those, and I'd like you to do a 25-page paper. I was into 4 classes, and by the time Friday came along, I looked at this thing, and I'm like, this is not going to happen. So that was a time in my life when I was totally over my head. Another approach that we take for being daring is sometimes these daring opportunities come out of the blue. I remember a couple years ago, right before we got here to Hawaii, I was with the Marines, and I had just done 8 months with them. We were on a MEU, which a MEU is a Marine Expeditionary Unit. We're the guys that would go into to the hot spots in the world. If there's an embassy overrun, the MEU's going to be the one sitting in. So we did our time on the block there. We were rolling through, and life was great. We had a great tour. We come home during Christmas time, get reacquainted with the family and everything like that. We have a great Christmas. January comes along. On the horizon for us was we're just assigned to go to Hawaii. We're like, man, this is a dream. We get to go to Hawaii and get to serve with the submarines. Well, God and the world had a different plan because we were still considered part of the MU. And that was when the Haiti earthquake hit. I remember when it hit, I called my wife and I says, honey, I need you to look at the news because it looks like something's going on that we may get called up. And her first response was, no, you had done your 8 months. Surely they're not going to make you guys go again. I'm like, we're still on we're the guys. We're the ones that do this. And lo and behold, the earthquake hit. There's massive amounts of loss of life. The president got on, and he basically said, we're going to be sending down the Marine Expeditionary Unit to do this, and that was my unit. So at the beginning of the week, I was heading towards Haiti. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, another little snippet of this story is that my wife was, what the Bible says, great with child, like 8 months pregnant. Okay, cool. So we get that, and then our family's faced with the move to Hawaii, which is a lot of work, and all of a sudden we're getting called to go down to Haiti. I leave. Amy's left with moving the family, having the child. I'm down in Haiti. It's funny because as a chaplain, I always get called for the Red Crosses and the life changes that happen to the sailors and the Marines that I deal with. And they would say, Chaplain, it's for you. And that would normally mean somebody in your unit, somebody has passed away or something's happened in those units. And we would, and every time that would happen, I would come in and, I'd tell the person and we'd try to get them home. Well, they said, Chaplain, it's for you. And I says, okay, who is it? No, it's for you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, your wife is pregnant, or your wife is has just given birth. And I'm like, no, she's not supposed to do that just yet. This is totally not in my plan, and this was not the way it was supposed to work out. Well, this is an example of when life kind of comes at you, and you're doing that daring thing, but it was totally off the beaten path. It wasn't where we were supposed to, or what I thought our plan was. The Lord still worked, and we were able to deal with it. Another approach that we would have with being daring is a lot of new responsibilities. I remember the first time we had George. He's born, and all the parents know this. You walk up to that child, and you're so happy. It's awesome. It's what a great experience. But you kind of, at least I was like, okay, now what do I do? Good grief. There's books out there about this, but those don't hardly even touch on how to really do this. This is totally new experience, totally left me, it's daring, and so you seize those opportunities. Those are different approaches that people take, or different things that come at us that make us daring. Now, there's a lot of different thoughts for being daring, and a lot of different mindsets, and some of them are just downright wrong. I remember me and my wife were watching Duck Dynasty. It's a new show. Those brothers get in all kinds of trouble. Well, they were out doing something new, and one of the brothers came up with a line that it just made me laugh so hard. I was just like, that's crazy. But then when I started thinking about it, it crystallized kind of a thought of how a lot of people approach new and daring things. He said, when you don't know what you're doing, do it fast. Like I said, if the Marine Corps took at that, or if the Navy took it and ran with doing daring things that way, it wouldn't work. Can you imagine a platoon of Marines heading up the hill, all charged, all ready to go, marching up there, doing their thing, and one of them, hey, Sarge, I kind of forgot my gun. Oh, well, that's okay, I forgot my helmet. And the other one goes, well, I can't even remember which hill we're supposed to attack. No. When you go into new and different things and challenging things, there's got to be a way of doing it with daring inherent into doing these new things. You want to get a momentum and enthusiasm about it, but you don't want that to overshadow some of the specific planning and the specific things that you want to do. Some other different and kind of wrong approaches to have a daring mindset is to do reckless action. I mean, because it's new, so you'll charge in and you'll just start hitting it as fast as you can. And this is when you allow your enthusiasm to get over your head, and mistakes will be made. Another faulty mindset for this would be is when you do mindless inaction. This is when you first approach that thing that's new and that's overwhelming, and it just stifles you, and you just stop. And in some people I've seen, they don't move after that. They let that fear and anxiety take over, and they don't go over that hurdle. So, and another approach that would be kind of faulty and that would hurt us in our approach to doing something daring for God would be just to kind of stagnate on the strategies that you're wanting to do. And this is kind of where I would fall into, because I'm a brainstorming type of guy, and I like to think outside the box. But if you're just caught in the planning stage and you never take that first action, you're never gonna actually gonna do anything. It's just stagnant, and you're not able to overcome. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to look at Nehemiah chapter 2, and we're going to look at the approach that Nehemiah did whenever he was charged with God to do something daring. So the setting of Nehemiah, the book of Nehemiah, is Nehemiah is a captive. He no longer lives in Jerusalem. He lives about 600, 700, 800 miles to the east of Jerusalem in what is modern-day Iran. He's even a little bit further east of Babylon, but he's the king's cupbearer. And he comes up, seeing some of the other people that were estranged away from their lands, the other Jewish people. He comes up with the idea, and God charges on his heart to go back to Jerusalem and to build the city walls. Okay, so I mean, this is, like I said, what's his job? He's a cupbearer, which is a very, very important job back then because you protect your king. But, I mean, that doesn't, cupbearer to engineer and civil servant. I mean, if we're stepping out of our comfort zone, this is the guy. And what we're going to do in Nehemiah chapter 2 is we're going to look at 4 different ways, 4 different things, kind of a procedure that he looked at. And as I was looking at the Marine Corps and the Navy and the submarines, how that they did all these, they incorporated a lot of these principles in there. Like I said, out of any other organization in the world that would capture doing daring and great things, it would be a military organization. But in their planning processes, they're pretty much doing exactly like this. And so if we kind of break that down from the institutional level and put it into our lives, these are great principles for us to look at, because your life is going to happen to where people and things are going to come across you that are new, that are unexpected, that are just a great challenge. And when that happens, God didn't just say, okay, now I hope you make it. He gives us an actual, if you study his word, he gives us an actual roadmap of some things to kind of think of to help us get along the way. The first thing that we look at is going to be where when you come up to something daring, you're going to gain permission. That's very important. I believe that God establishes authorities in our lives, and they're preordained, and that's very important that's kind of like a last step safety net for us to know that we're not just way out in left field doing something that's just not going to be where God wants us. So it's always good to go back to this and just say, okay, are my authority figures in my life, are they aligned with this? So that's important. Secondly, we're going to look at how we get prepared. And then thirdly, we're going to look at how we grasp perseverance, and then we're going to go and perform. So let's open our Bibles up to Nehemiah chapter 2. And the first verse we come to, and the first, like I said, the gain permission concept, it's found in Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 4 and 5. It says, "Then the king said to me, 'What are you requesting?' So I prayed to the God of heaven, and I said unto the king, 'If it please the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, that you send me to Judea, to the city of my fathers' graves, that I may rebuild it.'" So in this verse, we see that Nehemiah looked at and gained permission from 2 separate authority figures in his life. The first one that he looked at, he gained permission from God. This is pretty cool, because when he was charged to do this, it came from God, and then right before he started doing this, what was his first thought? Boy, I need to pray about this. That's where we need to be at. It's that instinctual, let me make this one last chance, one last time here. God, is this really what you want me to do? And if it is, I'm going to charge for it. So that's a very important authority figure, obviously, in our lives, and we don't want to lose that. Secondly, I think this is pretty cool. Not only did Nehemiah get permission from God, but he got permission from the horizontal leadership in his time, and is that if it pleased the king. Now, obviously, he's living in a different time, so you didn't have the freedoms that we have nowadays, but this still applies to us. That if we're approaching something that we want to do that's great, a lot of times you need to go back and say, okay, the people that I work for, my parents, my pastors, my authority, the people in my life, do they see me as going along in this direction? Now, that doesn't mean that if they don't, that you just give up on the idea. But what it does, it gives you a second chance or another look. Kind of be a red flag. Maybe I shouldn't go and do this. Maybe I should go a different direction. So it's very, very. I think this is a good step to launch out on this. That when we are going to take that final step and we're going to launch into this great thing that we're going to do for the Lord, we gain permission. It's kind of an instinctual thing. Next, what we're going to look at is how we get prepared. Let me read Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 6 through 9, and it says, "And the king said to me, the queen sitting beside him, 'How long will you be gone, and when will you return?' So it pleased the king to send me when I had given him a time. And I said to the king, 'If it please the king, let the letters be given to me to the governor of the province of beyond the river, that they may let me pass through until I come to Judah, and a letter to the king of forest, that may give me timber to make beams from the gates of the forest and of the temples and the walls of the city, and from the house that I shall occupy.' And the king granted me when I asked for the good of the hand of the God upon me. Then I came to the governors of the province beyond the river and gave me the king's letter. Now the king had sent me officers of the army and of the horsemen." Okay, so within this little pericope right here, with this little reading, we see that there's some specific logistical things that Nehemiah did. And I when I started studying this and I started looking at this whole thing, this was the coolest, most practical section here. I just like, wow, that's why in the world would we need to know in the Bible, this is preserved God's word, that that the king sent a letter. I mean that doesn't matter. Come on, let's get to the good stuff. Let's get over to where he's actually building the building, But no, this is important. I don't know. I have 3 kids, and I like remembering. I don't know if you guys ever remember the Muppets. There's a movie, The Great Muppet Caper, I think it's called. And in that, there's a scene where the Muppets are going against some really high-tech thieves, and they're trying to steal some diamonds or something. And I love how the cinematography they do in this, because they split it off. They show how the Muppets are getting prepared, and they show how the thieves are getting prepared. Now, I don't want to espouse that we should all become thieves, but if we look at the way that the Muppets prepared and the thieves, the thieves should have won the day. The Muppets are doing what? You got Animal that's, does anybody have a string? No, I think Animal ate it. Does anybody have this? Oh, no, I think Gonzo forgot it. And they can't even get nothing together. And so they go into this big battle with hardly anything. And then you look at the thieves, how they have all this high-tech electronic stuff, and it's like, my goodness. And a lot of times we as Christians, we get under the mentality that, God is letting me do this. He really wants me to do this great thing. So he's just going to make it magically happen. Okay, I do believe that God is providential, and I do believe that he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, and he will make you prosper if that's what he so desires. But that does not absolve us from the human responsibility of doing our job and actually getting prepared in the right way. So some of the things that Nehemiah prepared with, some specific things that we might want to prepare ourselves if we're attacking that daring procedure in our lives, is first, he got prepared with a specific timeline. So the question was asked in verse 6, how long will you be gone? seems to be a reasonable question. The king's losing his cupbearer, so he's like, give me a time frame on this. Another thing that we see in this is they got prepared tackling specific problems. In verse 7, they gave him a travel letter. Now, I could see myself totally forgetting about this, Okay, God has totally told me to go to Jerusalem and build this wall. So I'd march on over there. And you know what? In the ancient times, you didn't just travel on a road. It wasn't like hop in your car and we'll do this 800 miles in a day and a half. No, this is probably a 6-month, 7-month trip. And you go to different fiefdoms or different kingdoms. And if you don't have permission from the big man, the king, then you're not going to make it. They won't even let you go travel through their lands. So that's in our lives, just because it's so easy for us to do things, you need to, before you attack those great and mighty things that you're trying to do, start to brainstorm, start to think, okay, what's a roadblock? Is there any roadblock that's going to stop me from being able to do this? And let me go ahead and address that right now so that whenever I get to it, I can actually do what I'm supposed to be doing. Another thing is, another kind of a logistical issue that he tackled is a lumber letter, And this meets to the thing of you get out to there, and so we're here. Here we are, Jerusalem. We're ready to build this thing. Well, I don't have any wood. So do we live on planet Earth, and the materials that we need don't just magically just grow out of nowhere. So they talked about all the way down in this city, 800 miles away, that when you get over to Jerusalem, I'm going to give you a letter, and you're going to go get some lumber for us to build this thing. It's a beautiful thing, and like I said, working with the Marines, they got a process that's called a MCPP, Marine Planning Process. And when they're attacking the hill or they're doing some mission, they will sit down and they'll go through mind-numbingly slow. And I've sat through some of the meetings. I'm like, oh, good grief. But it's important because here's the deal. You've got 1,500 Marines with tanks, with all this stuff, and you don't just get there and go, okay, we're here, let's magically make this thing work. Well, in our lives, when God gives us something to do, it's good for us to pause, and it's good for us to sit and think, okay, we got a travel letter, I got a time frame that I need to do, and I when I get there, I've got this material that I need to be able to enact on. And the last thing that they thought about in getting prepared here is they set specific responsibilities for certain people. The pastor said it already. It's great looking at different people, how they have different gifts, Well, it's important that in those days that as you did a caravan, that you had people to protect you, because there's people that are nefarious that are going to, hurt you and whatnot. Well, in this passage right here in verses 9, it says, and they gathered men for protection, So that's a specifically assigned duty that those people had along that way. They were accomplishing the goal, but they had a specific duty and a different specific thing that they were supposed to be doing. So this is important. These are important things that as you tackle that great thing that you're supposed to do, that you're able to assign, hey, I know that you're really gifted at music, so why don't I, lean on this and let you bring forth that gift, and let me concentrate on something else that I've got something that God has given me a gift in. I mean, it's important that these things are assigned. Another thing that I learned from one of my commanders, my COs, he said that if we don't put a name to the specific job that they're supposed to do, then it's liable not to get done. And I thought that's beautiful because you've got an institution or you've got an organization that works, and then it's an assumption on a lot of different people that job such and such will get done. And we were having trouble, we just, stuff wouldn't get done. So here's what he said. He says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to tag a name to this specific job, and that's going to be the person that's responsible. And when it doesn't work, we're going to go to that person and say, hey, man, what's going on? And that's how these things work. And so there's some practical applications. And when I read passages like this, I get excited because it goes past the mentality that the Bible is just, a lot of these and a thous, and it's very out there, and it doesn't really live where we're at. No, we're learning today, right now, that, when God gave Nehemiah something to do, he specifically went down all these preparations, these specific things that he wanted them to do. So the next thing that we're going to look at is we're going to grasp perseverance. Let me read the passage, Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 10 through 16. It says, "But when Sanballat and the Hornite and Tobiah the Amorite servants heard this, it displeased them greatly that someone had come to seek the welfare of the people of Israel. So I went to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. Then I rose in the night, and a few men with me, and I told one what my God had put into my heart to do for Jerusalem. There was no animal with me but the one on which I rode. I went out by night by the valley of the gate to the Dagron springs and the dung gate, and I inspected the walls of Jerusalem that were broken down and its gates that had been destroyed by the fire. Then I went on to the fountain gate and to the king's pool, that there was no room for the animals that was under me to pass. Then I went up in the night by the valley and inspected the walls, and I turned back and entered the valley gate, and so returned. And the officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, and I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, and the rest who were to do the work." So, grasp perseverance. I remember one time, me and my wife was out walking our dog. His name was Junior, and this dog got along with everyone. So we're out there walking this dog, and he was a little dapple dachshund, just a little small thing. He's very exuberant, always wanted to try to say hi to all the dogs. And he was out walking, and there was this Boston Terrier, the ones with their big old eyes, real small too. And he walked up, he greeted that dog, and that dog turned around and bit him. And Junior looked up at us and go, "Did you see this? This dog just bit me." And all I was trying to do was be nice to him. I tell you that story because not everybody is going to be along and going on the same page as you go. We get all excited when God gives us something to do, and we're charging, we're ready to do it, and then the first time we meet somebody that doesn't see the world through our eyes, and just basically either they don't care, they're apathetic about what you're doing, okay, good for you. Go build that wall, yay, right on, dude. Or they downright don't like it. What do you mean you're building a wall? You're totally against the king on this. And, the simple fact is when we meet those type of people, we got to have enough perseverance and enough vision to go ahead and work ourselves around it. And work either confrontationally, just, okay, game on, if you're against me, we're going to charge you. Or you do other ways. You go, and we saw in this verse that, Nehemiah kind of took some other principles and other ways that he looked at this. So let's briefly pause and take a look at how Nehemiah grasped some perseverance here. First, it's because, once again, not everybody is going to see the world through the same vision. I think this is amazing. I mean, we are trying to do something great here. We're going to Jerusalem, and we're building a wall. The walls are not up. Why isn't this good? And for some reason, in verse 10, it says, it greatly displeased them. I'm like, come on, Sanballat and that other Tobiah guy. I mean, he's just like, really? You don't want me to build this wall? Are you kidding me? Well, the simple fact is that you will meet people out there that are totally against what you're trying to do, what you feel God has led you to do. And so you just got to kind of persevere. And one of the coolest ways that you can first you can persevere by just directly confronting them. We see that later on in this chapter. But another approach that he took to persevere against them is kind of a smart way. It says in verses 12, it says, "Then I arose in the night." Okay, so Nehemiah, when he got to Jerusalem, he had to do a survey of what the job is supposed to be done. He looked at this and he goes, okay, I'm here, I'm supposed to build this. And immediately on scene, he had these two knuckleheads that says, no, we don't want you to do this. Get out of here. Okay, so instead of confronting them right away, he said, okay, I don't want to really, you're not even worth my time, so I'm going to wait till night, and I'm going to go around and do this survey kind of when you're not around. That's an approach. Now, like I said, that may not be the only way that you can deal with people that are against you, but if you can find a way to work around them, then let's do that. I mean, if they're a stumbling block, but you work around them, then you're still accomplishing what God has you to do. So I think that's pretty cool that he rose in night and he went and he looked at the survey. All right, so we're to our last little thing. And this is the key. As I was thinking about this, this kind of, it's oriented in going and doing, and you're charged to do a great thing. And we can, in America, we can get caught into the mindset that, my success for this is whether or not I'm able to accomplish this mission. And I don't necessarily agree with that. Your success is if you're doing what God tells you to do, and He will accomplish the mission. And I think that this verse right here really shows us a balance of that approach. Now that doesn't mean, like I said, we have all this preparation, and we want to do the thing for the Lord. But I remember there's a verse that says, "Great faith that they which love them, faithful is he that calleth you, who will also do it." I mean, that's a beautiful verse. I mean, He's calling you to do it. You have to put the effort into it. But the actual increase and the actual success of this is done through God. And we see this kind of mentality in Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 17 and 20. It says, "Then I said to them, you see the trouble we are in, how Jerusalem lies in ruin with its gates burned. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer suffer derision. And I told them of the hand of my God that had been upon me for good, and also for the words of the kings that had spoken to me. And they said, let us rise up and build. So they strengthened their hands for the good work. But when Sanballat the Horite and Tobiah the Amorite, servant and Geshem the Arab heard it, they jeered at us, and they despised us, and said, what is this thing that you are doing? Are you rebelling against the king? Then I replied to them, the God of heaven will make us. And this is the crystallized. This is what Nehemiah held on to when he says, this is why I'm doing this. This is my ideology here. The God of heaven will make us prosper. We are his servants, his servants will rise and build, but you have no portion or right or claim in Jerusalem. That last verse there, the last section, is really, really the key on this whole thing. We need to first, that last verse gives us kind of a confidence in what we're supposed to be doing. In verse 17, 18, it says, I told them the hand of my God. My God has charged me. I didn't just come 800 miles here, leaving my comfy little job because hey, this would be great to do. Let's just do it. No, I did it because God's put this in my heart. And I have confidence in that, and that's where I really, really want to go. We're going to go to like a kind of a final thought. Secondly, we're going to have, we needed to have this confidence. We need to go and perform because we have faith in God's victory. That goes back to kind of the concept of, you do what God has asked you to do, but God is going to bring the progress here, or the success. God is going to give us victory. In verse 28, he says, God will make us prosper. It's on Him. I am here. I've done everything I've been asked to do. I did all the logistical stuff. I got us here. I'm in the right spot. I'm going to do my best. And, if I die, I'm where I think God wants me to be. That's okay. It's on Him. It's on God. He's going to make this work. And if He doesn't, well, then that's okay. Because it's not about whether or not I am successful here. It's about whether or not I'm doing what God wants me to do. It's a different mindset than we in America, because you look at a lot of the TV shows, such as, they train you on how to be a success, how to get the goal. This is divergent even from the Marine Corps and the submarines and all this, because, of course, they want to win the battle. But as Christians, we don't look at the win. We look at whether or not we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And secondly, it says we're gonna put our faith into action. We, His servants, we will arise and build. I mean, we could talk a good game all we want, but until we actually get out there and start hammering, and we get up to Syria and grab the lumber and start building, it's just nothing but talk. Let's start building. And then the really confident thing is that you're claiming God's victory, even in opposition sometimes to those that oppose you. He says, you have no portion or right in Jerusalem. I mean, instead of even going through the night, I think, like I said, I think that's a great strategy. If you have to, you work around the people that are in your way. But if there's a time that, there's no way we can work around this, you look them straight in the face and you say, you're in our way. We're supposed to be doing this. And, you're in the way. Move or leave us alone, And there's a time for that. I think, like I said, this is a beautiful chapter in the Bible, Nehemiah chapter 2, and it shows us a lot of great ways of going about and accomplishing what God has for us. It's good for us to tackle things that are outside of our comfort zone, but the most important thing, even in that, is that we're doing what God asks us to do, and we're marching on. Pastor, I'm going to let you take care of the invitation.